You know all these people, you've seen them. So now we're going to do our next steps panel, an opportunity to debrief, process, and make some decisions. So I know we've had a lot of content. Some of it has been a little overwhelming. I was in a meeting this week and this postcard fell out on the table. Somebody picked it up and they looked at it. Did you look carefully at the humongous metropolis behind in the background here and this high wire? And I opened this session yesterday with this concept of safety nets under that high wire so kids can gain confidence in how they are walking in a very dangerous space. And one of the things that I'm so short, you guys can't see me past screens, right? One of the things that I want us to be thinking about is that confidence is one of the signs of resilience. And if you have not listened to the podcast interviews that we've done with some of our guest speakers this weekend, please go back and look at like the last 10. I interviewed Christopher Dioria, proactive parenting, make her a hard target. I interviewed Jeremy. He talked about confidence as a sign of resilience. And I was just talking to Live to Free President Delaney Menninger and peer educator about what a different experience this is this year. It's because she's had opportunity after opportunity to build confidence. And that's what I want to encourage all of us as we go back to our classrooms, to our studies, to healthcare, to our faith-based communities. We want to build confidence because confidence is a signal that resilience is strong. Now, so let me, please don't forget, you can ask questions. I'm going to start with a couple, but if you have questions, things we didn't really clarify, please put those on Slido. But to remind you of who is here, Janis Price at that end, coordinator, family and community engagement from OCDE. I love working with OCDE, and March 20th, just 2 weeks almost away, we're actually, Global Center is hosting Janis and her family and community engagement meeting. And who should come to that meeting, Janis? You get free airtime.
Wow, thank you. I'm hearing it's going to be right in this building too. So it's an opportunity for school staff to meet community partners. So if you're a community partner that wants to work with like a family liaison or provide parent classes, we set it up really similar to this, where there'll be community agencies on the perimeter. So you could be one of those, or you could be a participant and sit at the tables again. Where the focus for this next meeting is also talking about immigration resources and know your rights to help all of our families and be able to know what's available in Orange County to support them and to know that we are walking alongside of them in their schools.
So good to have you here, Janis. I mentioned already Delaney, then Rabbi Diana Gerson, who says we can call her Diana. So everybody, let's just make her feel comfortable. Everybody say, hi, Diana.
Hi, Diana.
Oh, that's so fun. Okay, and then of course, our own Maddie Rodriguez from Project Kinship. And hi, Gil, back there in the back. I got to have lunch with Gil. You guys are thought leaders in this space, and there are a lot of others who could be up here. You participated this year, and I'm curious, what is your next step? What's the now what? Because you're really good in your space, but you've heard from other people as well. And there's no order. Maddie, just because you're closest to me does not mean you have to go first. Yay, okay. But what is your now what? What's the next step for you?
Well, that was kind of everything of my key takeaway is what is the next step. But speaking from specifically a college student perspective, I think that all of our college students right here, our next step is to really focus our individual selves and really how are we going to limit our digital media use? How are we going to be responsible on social media? How are we going to talk to our younger siblings about these topics? How are we going to talk to our parents about these topics? How are we going to talk to, if any of us want to be educators, our students, or our peer educators, our students? And even if any of us are, some of us are engaged, some of us may be married, how are we going to deal with that with our kids when that comes along? Because it has to start now, because we already have this conversation of how parents are finding it difficult to model that behavior, and we want to make sure that we're starting with ourselves right now, and we're making sure that we're really watching our own behavior and watching how we are consuming media and how we're acting online, so that when it comes to that point, it's not too late, and we already know how to be responsible and then how to be an example for those younger people in our lives.
Awesome.
For me, with working with staff in schools, I feel like I want to go back with so much hope and belief that everyone wants for things to be better. And that, yes, we've heard some really hard stories and things that hurt our heart, and we don't want to swish that under the rug, but we also too want to give the energy where it's deserved to have and shift the belief that families want what's best for their kids. And sometimes we go down the rabbit hole of thinking that, they're going to put the device in front of the kid because they don't want to parent right now. And we want to shift that thinking a little bit, and maybe how can we support them in knowing how to set boundaries so that they can be a really good parent and also to help with raising a good citizen. So I feel like if we could really be believing in our society and have the hope that we can change this too, so that we can keep going with it.
So I guess, Maddie, you're going to go last. I'm sitting and I'm thinking about bridge building. And I'm thinking bridge building on that hyper-global space. And yes, I said global. I want us to think globally. I want us to think about what's happening on the global scale, where we can act on a local scale, and how do we meet somewhere in the middle, right? We have to kind of close the gap between what's happening out there and what's happening in here. And it happens in so many aspects of our lives. But how do we build that bridge? So how do I take what's happening here in Orange County, and how do I replicate that in another county, in another state? And how do I then take that, measure what we've done successfully in one place, in a second place, and then we scale it to another place? And now how do I replicate that in another country? How do I take what I learn here and bring it someplace else? And how do I take what they're doing somewhere else and help that to inform how we function, how we are doing things, because we all have something to learn from one another. And the challenges that we're facing online, the laws may be different, but the internet's the same, right? The internet is the same, the devices are the same, the challenges that our children are facing because of the threats are the same. So we have to be working together. So how do we build those bridges?
I'm going to make a comment before we pass on to your observations. So that is a now what answer. Last year when Ezekiel Escobar from Fiat was here, and we planned to take our team to Madrid in May. This is March, April, May. All right?
Can I come?
You can meet us in Madrid. There you go. It's closer to New York than Los Angeles.
I'll call my friend, I'll call the ambassador.
Delaney is going to be working with members of our study abroad team to do a presentation just like the peer educators, because when Ezekiel was here, any of you that were here, you may remember that he said that the online pornography viewing starts at 9 years old with addictions in Spain. They have research. He said, how do we get into the schools? What do we do in the schools? So we're taking our local, there you go. And Delaney is captain of the team. So
I love that.
Just want us to understand when we talk about what's next, this is not hypothetical. I want to know that you actually did something next year. All right.
That's very cool. And I think also in that same vein, it's like, okay, so there's an ambassador in Spain, Albacete, and he used to work at CAICID. And so CAICID is the King Abdullah Institute for Interreligious Dialogue. So it's largely funded by Saudi Arabia, but it's 4 countries, including the Holy See. And so we can get him to come to the meeting that you're hosting, and maybe we help to connect into another set, another hub. So it's like, how do we take all these, erector sets and cogs and wheels, and how do we put it all together?
And it amplifies. There you go. Okay, Maddie.
Good afternoon. I'm excited, and I'm really grateful to hear all the takeaways, because this is the time where we culminate all the things heard and listened to and put it into application to actually make sure we activate. Even though we're probably tired, you're going to take a nap later today. Activating when you go back to your work on Monday. And I'm grateful for the previous presentation talking about responsible digital citizens. I loved hearing that terminology. And okay, how do we do that in our local levels and on the individual level, and even for ourselves? In the workshop, I actually was reminded myself, like, oh, Madeline, you need to practice this yourself as well. I was sharing that one of the families that we work with, one of our practitioners was saying, Maddie, like, the parents had an aha moment. They said, we have a consequence in our household that when our youngster is misbehaving, they have to have dinner with us. I'll say that again. The consequence for bad behavior is having dinner at the table as a family.
Wow.
When I hear that, and we hear that, the parents were like, how did we get here? How do we get to this moment where being together as a family, as a community, are sitting together intentionally and present? So I'm reminded, like, I've got to practice putting this away too. When I'm sitting at dinner with my husband or with my colleagues, my friends, my coworkers, or sitting across with others, how do I learn to just, we're putting it in the pile and saying none of us are touching that. We're going to have intentional quality time together to say, how are you doing? What did you learn? Was someone kind or unkind to you today? And let's talk about it. So creating those intentional talking spaces and quality time together is where we start on the individual and then locally, globally, but we need to practice here first, and I'm hopeful that all of us can make that commitment today.
Wow. Okay, so students, don't have to raise your hand. Parents in the room and grandparents, how many of you are willing this year to intentionally reduce your screen time? I do want a show of hands. Okay, all right. We could start at dinner and then progress. Okay. One of the things that over the last 7 or 8 years that we've been partnering with Orange County Department of Education has been the opportunity to learn what MTSS means. So I've given this to you a few times. I'm a professor. There will be a quiz. Can anybody stand up and say what MTSS stands for? And not you, Christine. Stand up and say it loudly. Is that close enough, you guys? Yay. Okay. Here. Somebody, here's her prize. Oh, you're going to have to come and get it. I can't throw very far. Okay. Okay. So these MTSS goals that we collaborate with include Tier 1, universal prevention. And so on that particular area, we're talking about faith-based and community engagement initiatives. And how do you see us, nonprofit, faith-based, university student, you're like the keeper of the keys, Janis. How do you see us supporting our schools? Because I've been at some tables where we complain about our schools, but I think we should be showing up. How do we do that?
So I know, again, I'm very grateful for our amazing team. I'm going to give a shout out to Tyrell and Gilbert back here who came today. So give them a hand. And I appreciate these two gentlemen because even though their focus work is within our juvenile reentry, which is critical to the work that they're doing with the youth that are in custody, anytime our schools teams reach out and say, we need a speaker, we need someone to come speak to these youth that are at risk, they're the first ones on deck to say, I'll go talk to the kids. What do you need? I'm gonna go talk to them. And I think we forget, and we forget the importance of that mentorship and stepping in to the call of duty. If a local school says, hey, we need parents or we need mentors or individuals in this area of specialty to come just do a talk for the parents. Maybe the commitment's not every month. Sometimes people are afraid of ongoing commitments. So maybe it's just a one-time event. Maybe it's just that one time you go, you might touch one parent, and that is enough. If it's just one adult, one youth that we're impacting, that is enough because that starts a ripple effect, right, and a chain reaction. So my encouragement would be to just step into the causes in your local areas. If you're a community partner, collaborate. I go back to the Bronfenbrenner's ecological framework that I shared yesterday, and all those arrows are interconnected. So the more that we partner together, the more we share our expertise and say yes to opportunities. Know when you have to, because we were just talking about the sentence of no, and knowing that we want to reduce burnout too. We can't do everything, but let's lean in with each other and support and remember that your voice matters. You have expertise, so step in and use your voice to encourage others.
So, has anybody here ever walked up to a house of worship and found the door locked? By show of hands. Like, middle of the afternoon, door is locked. Why? If there's a house of worship, I guarantee you there are people who have capacity to create after-school programs. Whether it's by volunteer, subsidizing, raising funds. The fact of the matter is, to raise a child, you need the entire village. And the reality is, what happens after school? More parents are working today than they have ever before. It takes more than most one incomes to be able to support a family in the United States. This is where we are. This is the reality of most Americans. Most Americans don't make $100,000 combined. And what is your child doing after school? Think about it. What does your child do between the time school ends, whether it's 2, 3 o'clock, and you're coming home from work at 5, 6, 7 o'clock? Who is watching your child? And for some of us, we're lucky and we have after-school programs in our communities. Our schools have extra, after-school events. We maybe have sporting events. Maybe there's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, I don't know, 4-H. But not every child has access to those things. We need to learn how to ask, what do you need from us? How can we help? And we need to throw the doors open. And not to throw the doors open just for the kids who are members of our church or our synagogues, but throw our doors open, create safe spaces for children to come and do their homework, to get a snack, to have activities, to have mentors. I love like adopt a grandparent programs, things like that. But the fact of the matter is we need to create those open spaces so the kids know that they have a safe place to be and that they're not out at the park and they're not hanging out by the bodega and they're not hanging out in a place that someone can come and pick them up. So let's create those safe spaces and let's work together. You know, for anybody who sits and talks about, oh, the school doesn't do this, I'm like, well, where are you?
That's right.
We have to be part of the solutions.
And I love that you said that because I wanted to touch on, in the film that we watched, it talked about how kids don't have after-school activities. It was like, 40%, I think, was something like that. Kids don't have things to do, so all they have to do is go on their phones and go to these mind-numbing things that, affect their cognitive abilities, affect their abilities to regulate their emotions, affect their socializing, all these different things. And I just remember when I was in high school, like having things to do was the reason why I was getting through school. Like having a youth group program to go to after was the reason I wanted to go to school, because I wanted to get done with it and go to my youth group. And then that led to me becoming a leader at those youth group programs and then being there for other kids and helping them, being that older sister figure in their life when maybe their parents weren't able to do that for them, or even their actual siblings weren't able to do that for them. And to me, that's just so important. And the same thing with after school, educational programs. There need to be places for kids to go, whether it's in school or out of school, that aren't going to feel so heavy, especially if their home lives are heavy, especially if that's what every day feels like. They need to have an escape from that. And because we don't have that, that's why they go to technology. And that's why there's an abuse of digital media, because they have nothing else, or they feel like they have nothing else. So we need to be leaders in those spaces. I'm sure, because all of you guys are here, I'm sure you guys are leaders of some sort. And if you're not, you should be, because whoever's above you, they should be here. Because that's so important that you guys are here, that you guys care about the people in your lives and you want to lead them in that way. I think that being able to be a part of something on my campus that is a part of such a bigger picture, so much more than I am and will ever be, is so important to me, because I get to lead other people and I get to show them the full potential that they can have and help them, meet those self-actualization needs in Maslow's hierarchy to really feel like they're fulfilling what they need to be fulfilling. And so I think that's our place in this, and especially as college students, be a part of something bigger than yourselves, because I know we have assignments and it's hard. I know we've got majors, we've got minors, we've got double majors. You guys are doing an amazing job, but be a part of something that's bigger than that, something that really doesn't just make you feel worth because you got a grade on it, but it makes you feel worth because you changed somebody. Anybody. When you're going out to schools and you're looking kids in the face and you see their reactions to the things that you're talking about, and you see that their hearts are being touched by those topics, that changes your life. And honestly, this is the best thing that I think I could have done in school. And I just wish we had more programs like this here in California, but even Orange County, I wish we had more ways to reach all these different educators in all these different schools, because this is so important. And I think that's our job in this. So.
Don't you just want to hire her right out of school? No, she has to finish. Janis, so in the homeless youth workshop, we were talking about kids who were under McKinney-Vento Act, defined as homeless because they're couch surfing, living in motels, where of course you don't get to set parental safety settings on the wireless they access. But they come to school, maybe they haven't had breakfast, maybe their notebook was left at the last place they slept and now they're not there. And so Judge Maria Hernandez was in my little group at the back, wave it. She comes every year, even though she's presiding Orange County Judge, Ensure Justice is part of her life. So we just love that. And she wanted us to think about, yes, please, we are so grateful. She wanted us to think about teachers who were buying pencils and extra notepads and binders and breakfast bars because they know that about their kids. We're not telling them something they didn't know. Am I right, Christine? So how do we, as nonprofits, faith-based students, how do we make sure that our school has those things? I can think of 7 churches that could make sure that Santa Ana teachers aren't adding that to their financial burden personally.
Thank you for thinking of that, because as everyone was sharing, although can I give you a hug? Because beautiful story. Thank you so much. Please think about partnering with our schools. We've got teachers that have not been trained in family and community engagement. They got trained to be a teacher. They got trained to work with kids. And that was their heart and their interest. And now we're asking them to see a child who needs food and provide clothing and stay with them after school for intervention trainings and listen to the parents and their stories. I mean, there is a big burden within our educational system, and you still have teachers that are there every day and very, very committed. So anything, yes, if you could think about ways to support your teachers. Even I heard of I think it was you were sharing about, like, somebody was sharing about a church providing meals for teachers for a Wednesday because we care about you. You know, there is beautiful things that you can do too. And I think schools also too need to believe in their community, that they have a wonderful capacity to build beautiful things together. So we need to open our doors too. There needs to be a partnership there that could be a beautiful thing. I would like to just plant the seed for you to do some learning on your own if you're interested, or connect to your local schools around the Community Schools Initiative. There's a lot of transformational things happening. Fullerton Elementary School District is one recipient of the grant, where that school, and using some new funding that's coming through, is really meant to be a hub in the community, to where everyone has a place at the table to be seen and heard and educated, and you could sit at the principal's table to be able to hire the next administrator that comes in. The idea behind it is beautiful, and we need your partnership to make these community schools what they truly can be, where you could have an after-school program provided by the faith-based organization on the school site. The idea is phenomenal, and it's just getting started. So I'll plant the seed with you there if you want to talk about it more. I know Ruthie probably would be able to talk to you. I could talk to you about it too, but Community Schools Initiative is where you want to be paying attention to and partnering with your schools. Before I hand it off, I do know that we have 150 schools in Orange County that have community school funding. I'll say that again, 150 schools. Wow. Who each of those schools need a community steering committee, where a community partner needs to be on that, and a student, and a parent, a university, whatever that might look like, that's going to affect the community in exactly what they need. So I really encourage you to take a peek at that.
So let's, Maddie, in keeping with this part of the conversation and these pathways to support our kids at risk, and I was actually challenged a few years ago to quit saying at-risk youth, because that kind of makes it a label, but youth who are at risk is a process, and it's something we can interrupt, but that's for free. How do we bring our restorative practices into our relationships with the schools?
Yeah, thank you. It goes back to modeling. I appreciate that you were stating that let's not get frustrated with the system. Sometimes we have to model for the system. And we do that all the time. I keep highlighting my guys back here because they actually have been an example to me on what that looks like at the forefront. You know, before, and I'll just share a quick story, when we were first stationed at the Intake Release Center, for example, doing outreach and engagement, we couldn't even use the restroom inside the sheriff's lobby. Now we have a whole kiosk in the sheriff's lobby, and they bring cookies for Christmas. And when we check in with the commanders, we do a one-word check-in. and they're ready, and they're saying, I feel ready, and I feel compassionate today. And I'm like, great. But it didn't start that way. It took partnering with and saying, let's do this together. And when it was confusing or challenging, we said, hey, we're here to do, we're a team, we're a community, we all want the same goal. And we do that with administrators, and we've been so blessed and fortunate that with all these campuses, that when we find that one champion, we lean in, and then we say, how do we start modeling and partnering so that we can, again, chain reaction, ripple effect, and create community. In the workshop, we talked about that the premise of restorative practices is to build relationships, repair harm, and establish us as a community. I shared before, there was that written word, there was a spoken word. We were required to come together at a table to say, you matter. Let me hear you, because it meant our survival. We've forgotten how to do that. We need to get back to those basics and make it each of our personal responsibilities to partner with and to call on local. We have a beautiful restaurant, La Perla restaurant. I got to give them a shout out. They wanted to just give back. So every week, once a week, the señora, the doña of the restaurant, she comes and she makes food for anyone that's there. And that happened with just the relationship building and them saying, we want to be involved. How can we help? Once a week, if you want to come by and give food, that would be great. Some of our community day school sites partnered with some of our staff, the administrators and the counselors, and said, we need to have an emergency pantry for some of our youth that are McKinney-Vento or also just struggling that need some basic needs for their household. And now there's a pantry, but it takes just active conversations and listening to the need and making sure we're activating to create strategies together.
And one of the things that I sort of thought when I first came to Vanguard is if students are at Vanguard, they are just like the cream of the crop. They've had all the resources they need, everything. And then the longer I was here, the more I discovered my office was a safe space. And I found out I had students living in a car or couch surfing. And I started making sure I had a drawer that was really my little mini pantry. And now Vanguard has a Living Well pantry. They have resources like that because this is not something that is quiet and we keep a secret. We want to be open that this is a community that takes care of itself. And that is true in each of our school districts as well. Okay, I have no questions from you. So as we wind down, next steps for me have to be a little more concrete than I wish I could. So please don't start a sentence with I wish I could. Start a sentence with something that you would like to make to see it as either a practice or, if you're brave enough, a policy in your organization. Yeah, we're starting down there.
That's a big question for schools. It's not easy having policy stuff, but
Practices, just
practices,
a step
yes.
lower.
So, and this is a very personal one. So, speaking of a mom hat, not OCDE, but in education, I would love to see that everything that kids learn, parents learn. That's it.
Woo! Aren't you glad you already raised your hand that you're going to reduce your screen time?
Yeah, well, if you guys don't know, Lent started this Wednesday, and I gave up my Instagram and my TikTok for the next 40 days. I did the same thing last year, and honestly, it's why I got through the time that Dr. Morgan's talking about. That's what created this resilience, was not having the opportunity to go to the mind-numbing place, to have to look at what I was going through and face it and come out on the other side of it because of that. So I, in honor of that, wanted to do the same thing. You know, negative behaviors, they come back up when we go back to these things. So I encouraged my roommate to do the same. I encourage all of you guys, it's not too late. I totally, it's not. Even if you give it up for a week, I think it's already been beneficial. I had so many assignments. I had this conference, and there were so many times where I was like, it's overwhelming. I don't want to do it. I want to go to the I don't have to think about it place, but I can't go there, so I have to do my assignments. And that's why I will be passing my classes this semester. So, yeah, I encourage you guys to do it.
Good job. Okay, I think I can go without it for 16 hours. I'll set achievable goals. Okay.
That sounds like intermittent fasting to me.
Which they said isn't really very healthy. Huh?
I know.
Oh, well.
But I do think about things like Shabbat, the Sabbath. Today. So in Judaism, to understand a little bit about our calendar, all of our holidays begin at sunset and end at sunset, because it says in the Bible, Vayera, Vayivoker, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni. There was evening, there was morning, day one. There was evening, there was morning, day two. So we believe that the day begins at night. Thank you, rabbis. With that said, there are 39 prohibitions of work in the Jewish tradition on Shabbat. 39. And when I say we create fences around the Torah, well, those 39 prohibitions have gotten very large. You're not allowed to make a fire, okay? Which means now I can't turn on a car. I can't turn on a light switch because I'm closing a circuit, therefore I'm creating a spark, right? I can't create a shelter, therefore I cannot put up an umbrella. I cannot make something, so therefore I can't cut something in half. My favorite was a rabbinic discussion about, can I open a can of tuna fish if with a handheld, manual opener instead of an electric opener? And one rabbi said, no, because when you open the can, you're making a kalim, you're making a vessel. So another rabbi says, oh, but if you open the top and the bottom, then you can open the can of tuna fish. So when I say that in Judaism we have a lot of rules, our rules have rules, and those rules have rules, and we have lots of rules. But one of the things that I love is the idea that we're supposed to take a break. Shabbat is supposed to be a rest. It was a rest for the divine. It's supposed to be a rest for human beings. So give yourself grace and give yourself a rest one day a week. For one day, put your phone aside. Don't turn on the TV. Take a walk. Be present with friends. Go for worship. Go write poetry. Go do something that fills your heart with joy. Surround yourself with people you love. Give yourself that rest, and that is practice. That is something that we have to really focus on. And if we do it once a week, that's 52 days in a year, that we give ourselves a little rest. I did it for the first time where I truly offline. I did it, turned my phone off, went out, spent the day with friends. Literally, my boss showed up at my house to ask the doorman if he had seen me that day. So Rabbi Joe walked over to my house to make sure, because my sister called, because she's like, we can't find her. Because I really went offline. So give yourself that privilege, that practice of going offline once a week and being present with those you love, even if it's just the Lord.
Wow.
I love that. It reminds me of someone that told me, your cup is always full. What are you filling it with? So give yourself, I'm speaking of which, I'm going to give myself permission to rest later today. The takeaway, I'm looking at Gil. I'm going to thank Gil for this one, because in my early days, running around like a little busy bee, even in the moments of us doing a check-in, I'd be doing this. Sorry, I've got like 50 other emails coming. And then Gil finally tapped me and said, Maddie, I'm right here. I want this time. And I said, okay. I had to turn around, and then we learned what it was to be intentional. And that going back to the pausing, when you're sitting with people, it's so important for us to not get caught up in the busy work and how many 50 other things. We have to learn how to be better with our quality time, our intentionality with connection. If you were in my workshop, we talked about connection is the excellent. It's the curriculum. And if I'm not doing this well, then I'm not going to do anything else well, because we are hardwired to be with one another. So let's practice that. Take care of yourself, but practice being better, being present. And thank you, Gil, for helping me remember that. Love you.
This is good. This is very good. Last comment, anybody?
I just want to remind everybody, I just wrote this down and I loved it. Professor, let's see, is it Hittenberg? Professor Hittenberg had mentioned love and wisdom, and I just think that can tie everything up in a pretty bow, even though it's a very unpretty picture. Everything we've been hearing and learning can be so overwhelming, and we want to just cut the tech completely and hide because it's so hard to deal with it and face it. But love and wisdom, and what the film added, the way that parents should address this, they added love and warmth. I think that's the best way to go about all of this. So that's my 3 words I'm going to remember: love, wisdom, and warmth.
So good. Give them a hand. The love and wisdom also sparked in my mind the principles in Philippians 1, 9 through 11, where Paul says that my prayer for you is that your love will abound. And we do hear in this work, in this space, that we want to love the children, we want to love the victims. If you didn't take a look at the art piece back there, that 25 survivors were on our campus last week learning leadership skills, and they left their puzzle for us to enjoy. For that love to abound, the rest of the verse is like, you need knowledge and insight. Knowledge. Finish your degrees, okay? Do your homework. You need knowledge if you want your love to grow. Knowledge and insight, so that you can discern, have that wisdom. And then the next verse, it's all work. It says, so that you can do the best, the pure, and the blameless in everything you do. Best, you just give it everything you have, all your knowledge, to the best of your ability. Pure, what are your motivations? Are you doing this so that people will look at you and you'll get 5,000 likes before midnight? And blameless. Because as a community of faith, what we do brings credit to our Maker. Or if you read my book, I was being called a wacko Christian, and that didn't sound good. So I want to make sure that when we talk about love, when we talk about knowledge, that we take it to the practice of best, pure, and blameless, because it matters in our faith communities. And it certainly matters to those that we serve. So, have you had a good couple of days? You feel a little overstuffed? Okay, before sundown, when the Sabbath for my practice begins, I do have a few things for you to do. First of all, how many of you know that if your speaker in your workshop, or the one you wish you could have gone to and the other one, if they gave us a PowerPoint, you can download it. You go to that section, oh, I see all these surprises, and download that PowerPoint. So you can check up on the one you missed. Or if you were in one of the plenaries, Chris D'Oria, everybody loved. Did you love Chris D'Oria, even though it was virtual? His PowerPoint is right there for you to download and share in your community. Sketch has some wonderful resources for you. And what I want to ask you to do next is to scan the day 2 evaluation on your table and do that evaluation before you do anything else. That evaluation will help us be warmer next year. I'm sure of it. Right, Meredith? Yes, I'm sure. I'm going to work on that. I'm committed to that. We are hoping to make an impact in our community to keep our kids safe online and to grow their resilience. And meeting together is a beginning point, not an end. I can't wait to hear the stories of the people you connected with and then became a volunteer or began to work with them in your school. And I want to thank Christine and the rest of the OCDE prevention team for partnering with us again. And I want to thank Captain Meredith Reuter. She did an amazing job. No glitches. Yes. And her whole team, Jamie and Derek and our adjunct teams. Ruthie's teaching the course and Brenda's here. My daughter, the other Dr. Morgan, for bringing screenagers to us. And Mark, this is your first Ensure Justice, and you did a fabulous job because we're not easy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please do your evaluation before you leave. Be sure, nurses, to sign out before you go. All right? All right. Be blessed and have a wonderful Saturday evening, Sunday. Bye-bye.